Right after I completed the overhaul of my parents' home, my dad didn't hesitate to show me the door. "Your sister's moving in here," he declared. I didn't protest. I just left without a word. It wasn't until 2 days later that they grasped the consequences of their decision. In hindsight, I should have anticipated it. The warning signs were obvious. My parents were always the type to take more than they offered, viewing generosity as a favor rather than an obligation. I overlooked it, clinging to the belief that family should stand by one another. When I hit a financial rough spot, I didn't immediately worry. My freelance gig had ended unexpectedly, and though I had some savings, they wouldn't hold me over forever. Bills, rent, and daily expenses were mounting, and I needed a lifeline. Moving back with my parents seemed like a practical choice, at least for a while. They had room, and when I mentioned it, they agreed readily. But there was a condition. The house needed fixing up. My dad pitched it as a mutual benefit. If I took on the repairs, I could live there without paying rent. I had some experience with home improvement, and the bedroom I was meant to occupy was in rough shape. The walls were damaged, the carpet was worn and filthy, the door was broken, and the hallway to the room was a wreck. My dad made it sound like I was helping myself. "You get a place to stay and we'll finally spruce up the house," he said. "It's a win for everyone." So I agreed. For nearly 2 months, I poured my heart into the work. My days began at dawn, and I often stayed up late, covered in grime and paint, my muscles sore from endless labor. I ripped out the old carpet and laid new flooring. I patched up cracks, painted walls, replaced the door, and installed built-in shelves. The hallway was an even bigger job, replacing lights, fixing squeaky boards, repainting, and repairing crumbling ceiling plaster. At first, I used whatever supplies were on hand, but soon realized I'd need to buy most of the materials myself. My parents never offered to cover costs, and I didn't press them. I convinced myself it was fine because I was improving my own space. In total, I spent $3,700 on supplies, flooring, paint, lumber, tools, everything. I didn't track it closely, thinking it was an investment in my future. I should have been wiser. The day I finished, my dad called me over. My mom stood beside him, wearing that vacant look she always had when she was about to support his absurd decisions. I expected gratitude, maybe recognition for my hard work. Instead, my dad dropped the bombshell. "We've decided your sister will live here." I waited for clarification, hoping it was a misunderstanding, but they were dead serious. My mom nodded like it was the most reasonable choice ever. I let out a dry laugh, but they didn't join in. "What do you mean?" I asked. "We agreed on this." "Needs the room more," my dad said. My sister, who already had a decent apartment with her partner who hadn't lifted a finger during the repairs. I asked when they decided this. My dad just shrugged. "We've been considering it for a while. It's not personal." Not personal. I looked at the room I'd spent nearly 2 months and almost $4,000 transforming. I thought about arguing, calling out their selfishness, demanding they at least reimburse me for the materials. But I knew them too well. It would have been futile. They'd already made their choice, so I stayed silent. I turned, packed my belongings, and left. I'd been sleeping on the couch during the renovations, expecting to move into the finished room. Now I was unwelcome. They probably expected me to plead or fight, but I refused to give them that satisfaction. I left without a word. What they didn't know was that in 48 hours, they'd regret it all. When I walked out, I had no plan, no fallback. Just my truck, a few bags, and the heavy realization that I'd spent nearly 2 months working for people who discarded me the moment it suited them. But I didn't argue or shout. I just left. I drove aimlessly for hours, replaying the sweat, the exhaustion, the $3,700 I'd spent. My parents never acknowledged it. They watched me pour my time and money into their home and acted like it was nothing. That night, I parked outside a 24-hour gas station and slept in my truck. It was cramped and uncomfortable, but it was mine. More than I could say for the house I'd left behind. The next morning, I knew I needed a plan. My savings were dwindling, and I didn't want to burn through them on a motel. I started contacting friends to see if anyone had a spare couch. Most were too far or had their own problems. Then I thought of Mike, an old colleague I used to be tight with. I called, gave him a brief rundown without diving into details, and he didn't hesitate. "Come over, stay as long as you need," he said, so I drove to Mike's about an hour away. When I arrived, he handed me a beer and asked no questions. It was exactly what I needed. Then, 48 hours after I left, everything shifted. My phone started lighting up, missed calls from my dad, texts from my mom, even messages from my sister who rarely reached out. I ignored them at first, but the flood of notifications piqued my curiosity. Then my cousin Sarah texted, "Dude, what did you do? Your parents are losing it." I replied, confused. "What are you talking about?" Her response came fast. "They won't say, but they're freaking out. My mom said your dad's talking about lawyers. WTF? Lawyers, that stopped me. Then I saw another text from my dad. You better fix this, now." I stared at my phone, baffled. I hadn't done anything. I'd left quietly without touching their house or causing damage. So why were they panicking? I leaned back in Mike's chair, thinking. Slowly, it dawned on me. It wasn't about what I'd done, it was about what they thought I'd taken. The moment they noticed something missing, they realized they'd messed up. I ignored their messages for hours, letting them stew in their own chaos. But the texts kept coming, and soon my sister started calling too. That was odd. She barely contacted me under normal circumstances. I let it go to voicemail but couldn't resist checking Dot instead of calling her back. I texted Sarah. "Okay, what's going on?" Her reply came instantly. "Your sister showed up to move in and flipped out. Your dad's furious. Your mom's crying. Everyone's a mess." I smirked. Good. I knew my sister well enough to imagine the scene. She probably arrived with her boyfriend, expecting a pristine bedroom only to find a disaster. And the best part? I hadn't done a thing. I'd left the house exactly as it was. The floors were laid, the shelves were up, the lights worked, everything was finished as planned. So what went wrong? I texted Sarah again. "What's the issue?" Her response made me laugh out loud. "Apparently the house reeks." I blinked. "What? Yeah," she replied. "Your sister said there's a disgusting smell in the bedroom and hallway like something's rotting. She refused to move in." That caught me off guard. I thought back. I'd done all the work myself. There was no way I'd left anything to cause a stench like that. But then it clicked. The flooring. The hallway and bedroom had water damage before I started. That's why I'd torn out the old carpet. The subfloor underneath was damp and slightly rotted in spots. I'd told my dad we needed to replace it entirely, but he refused, saying it was too costly, and insisted I just put new flooring over it. I'd argued, but ultimately did what he wanted. Now, 2 days later, that trapped moisture had likely turned into mold, seeping through. I grinned. They'd brought this on themselves. If they'd let me do it properly, there'd be no issue. But they cut corners as always, and now the stench of rot was ruining their shiny new renovations. Sarah texted again. "Your dad's calling contractors to figure it out, but they say they might have to tear everything up. He's saying you wrecked the house." I couldn't stop laughing. The man who'd kicked me out after using my labor, who let me spend $3,700 of my own money, and then gave the room to my sister, was now facing thousands in repairs. And the best part? I owed him nothing. I sat back, sipping my beer, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. For once, I didn't have to lift a finger to get even. They'd done it to themselves. By the next morning, my mom's texts had shifted from guilt trips to desperate pleas. "Jonathan, please, we need your help. We didn't know how bad it was. Your dad's overwhelmed. If you could just come back and help fix it, we'd be so grateful." I wasn't fooled. I knew the deal. My sister refused to move in, the smell was worsening, and now they needed me again. I ignored them for a bit, but then my sister called. I answered, mostly curious. "Jonathan, listen," she said right away. "I know you're upset, but this is serious. The house is unlivable. There's mold or something under the floors. I can't move in until it's fixed." I almost laughed. "Not my problem," I said. She sighed. "Dad's willing to make a deal. Can you just come check it out?" "Make a deal?" I repeated. Like how he made a deal before by kicking me out the moment I was done. I wasn't planning to go back, but her tone made me curious. I wanted to see their mess for myself, so I said, "Fine, I'll stop by, but I'm not promising anything." A few hours later, I pulled into their driveway. My dad was outside, pacing hands on hips. When he saw me, he waved me over like nothing had happened. "Jonathan, glad you're here," he said, forcing a grin. "Come take a look." I stepped inside, and the smell hit me immediately, a thick, musty odor like rotting wood and mildew. The air was heavy. My sister stood in the bedroom doorway, arms crossed, looking miserable. "I can't live here," she muttered. "It's gross." I walked in, pretending to inspect the flooring. I already knew the problem. The moisture trapped under the new floors had turned into a mold infestation. Fixing it meant ripping everything out. The flooring I'd installed, the hallway repairs, the shelves. It wasn't a quick fix. It was a complete redo. My dad cleared his throat. "So here's the plan," he said. "You come back, help us tear this out, do it right this time, and—" He smiled like he was offering me a gift. "We won't kick you out. You can stay as long as you want." I laughed, a real hearty laugh. This man who'd used me, discarded me, let me spend my own money, was now acting like he was doing me a favor by letting me stay in the home I'd rebuilt. I shook my head. No, his smile faded. What? No, I repeated. I'm not fixing this. His face reddened. Jonathan, be reasonable. This is your family. We're supposed to help each other. I smirked. Funny. You didn't think that 2 days ago. My sister looked away and my mom shifted awkwardly, but my dad kept pushing. We made a mistake. We should have done things differently. But are you really going to let your family struggle when you can help? Yes, I said calmly. I turned and walked out, no yelling, no arguing, just done. It felt incredible. I got in my truck, grinning, and drove off without a glance back. I thought that was the end, but my family wasn't finished. An hour after I got back to Mike's, my phone started buzzing again. I ignored the calls, but then Mike laughed, holding up his phone. Dude, your mom posted on Facebook. I frowned. What? He showed me the screen. A long, dramatic post from my mom about her ungrateful son who'd abandoned his family in their time of need. She didn't name me, but it was clear who she meant. She wrote about how they'd taken me in when I was struggling, fed and housed me, only for me to turn my back when they needed me most. She conveniently left out how they'd kicked me out after I fixed their house. The comments were predictable. That's terrible. Family comes first. Kids these days are so disrespectful. I can't believe he'd do that. Mike scrolled down. Here's a good one. Your aunt wrote, don't worry, I'll talk to him. I sighed. Great, soon relatives started texting. My aunt. Jonathan, how could you do this to your parents after everything they've done? My uncle. I don't know what's going on, but fix it. They're your parents. Even my grandma sent a wobbly text. Why you do this? I was about to silence my phone when Sarah called. I answered. Let me guess you saw the post? Yeah, she said, and it's worse than you think. How? They're telling people you stole from them. I nearly dropped my phone. What? They're saying you left mid-renovation and took materials, screws, tools, stuff, leaving the house a mess. I laughed. They know I didn't take anything, right? I know, she said, but they're making you the villain and people are buying it. I shook my head, stunned. I expected anger, maybe guilt trips, but outright lies. That was low, even for them. Mike leaned back. So what's your move? I thought for a moment, then smiled. Nothing. Sarah paused. Seriously? Yep, I said. They want a reaction. They want a fight. I'm not giving it to them. Mike grinned. That's ice cold. I love it. Sarah sighed. Good luck, but don't be shocked if they try something else. She was right. The next day I was at work, managing inventory at a warehouse, a steady job that paid the bills when I looked up and saw my dad in the lobby. I almost laughed. Of course he showed up. I walked over. What are you doing here? He crossed his arms. We need to talk. I could tell from his face he wasn't here to apologize. He was here to lecture, to pressure me, to act like he still had control. I cut him off. Save it. I'm not coming back. I'm not fixing anything. I'm done. His jaw tightened. Jonathan, you're being unreasonable. Your mother's distraught. She hasn't slept since you left. I scoffed. She slept fine after kicking me out. Funny how that works. He pressed on, ignoring me. She just wants her family whole again. We all do, but you've put us in a tough spot. Is this really fair? I stared at him. Fair, let's talk fair. Fair would have been letting me stay in the room I fixed. Fair would have been valuing my work instead of tossing me out. Fair would have been not lying about me online, painting me as a thief. His face darkened. We only said that because you forced us. I laughed. You forced yourselves. I didn't do anything. You made this mess and now you're looking for someone to blame. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to fix this. Let's find a solution. There's no solution, I said. You made your choice, now I'm making mine. His expression shifted. He saw I wasn't budging. Jonathan, he said softly, trying one last time, we're still your family. No, I said. You're just people I used to know. He opened his mouth, but I was already walking away. That was it. No yelling, no big scene, just done a week later. I blocked them all, changed my number, and moved into a new apartment. Sarah kept me posted for a bit. My parents were playing the victim to anyone who'd listen. My dad told relatives I'd abandoned them for no reason. My mom cried to family about not knowing what went wrong. But eventually, I told Sarah to stop updating me. I didn't care anymore. I'd spent years bending over backward for people who'd never reciprocate. For the first time, I was free. No guilt, no obligations, no family who saw me as a tool. And it felt incredible. If you connected with this story and felt its weight, please give it a like, share it with others, and subscribe for more real-life tales and emotional journeys. Your support means everything and helps us deliver more stories like this. Thanks for reading, and I'll see you in the next one.